What's going on? Welcome back to another episode, everyone, of A Little More Light. My name is Kev.
My name's Dee.
And you are tuning in to yet another episode of the greatest podcast
The greatest podcast. That's a big claim.
the world has ever seen in 2024.
It's true. Maybe it'll become the most popular podcast in 2025.
It might, but it's the most popular podcast to me and my parents.
Oh, for sure. They are avid listeners.
They are.
Yeah, shout out.
My dad, when he does cycle, he's like, you guys are the first podcast that I choose to listen to.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What are some, to our listeners out there, what are some podcasts that you guys are enjoying, have enjoyed this year? Drop us a comment. We'd love to listen to what you guys are listening to. Give us some fresh ideas.
I thought you were asking that.
Oh, okay. Well, what is your favorite podcast right now? Because I do know you listen to quite a few.
Yeah, well, if you didn't listen to last week's episode, everyone should know. And if you haven't looked at my Instagram account, would be living under a rock. But anyway, you should know that I am training for a marathon in 2025, so I have a lot of time basically to myself running, so I listen to a lot of podcasts. But honestly, this is cliche, but the best podcast to listen to get through those runs is Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan. He's had some crazy guests
He
on
has.
his podcast, too.
He's phenomenal.
Yeah, he's cool. We were listening to one on a drive. Forget where we were driving.
We're listening to Mike Rowe.
Yeah, Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs.
Yep.
And just the way that they do their podcast is so interesting because it's just like a back and forth conversation, but it's so honest.
Well, here's the thing. Honestly, it's so good because I was listening to one today, and like, not to get, but to get real, like someone can BS you, or someone can like basically
Be kind of fake.
Be kind of fake for an hour, right? Like,
yeah.
For an hour conversation. And I'm not saying, guys, I mean, we're 25 minutes, so we could be really fake if we wanted. I hope we don't come across as fake. But what he says is like someone can be fake for an hour, but it's really hard to be fake for hour 2 and hour 3. And that's what like Joe Rogan is so good, is like they have such honest conversations, but conversations that like go back and forth, and Joe knows a lot and his guest knows a lot, that like by the end of it, you generally realize that the individual who's talking on the other side like has real honest opinions and also probably knows a good amount of things about their subject.
Well, and even too, like if they are just putting on a show or if they're actually like, I'm sure, passionate or knowledgeable about what they're saying.
Yeah.
Too.
I won't say about who he was talking about, but I'll just leave it at that.
That's funny. What's some other podcasts you like listening to?
I mean, I think you and I both like a little true crime action.
We do. Yeah, we do. I forget the one that we've been listening to.
Crime Junkies.
Crime Junkies. Yeah.
That's a good one. I think I like that one. Not because I'm some sick, murder-loving individual. But I think I like it because of their storytelling.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
Again, they're back and forth, but also the research that they have to do in regards to like
when they get
developing.
Deep.
Yeah.
Like they go deep into like the archives of FBI investigations and who said what, and they even go and interview people.
They're investigators, and at the end of the day, like I think, and this whether that's like us watching, we've also been watching Only Murderers in the Building, which is another
a great show.
Crime show, very highly recommended. Shout out to Selena Gomez for your recent engagement. Taco Bell might have sponsored their engagement, but you don't know. You should go look into that. It's crazy. Anyway,
what the heck?
I'm just making connections here. Okay. But then also, like, I just watched a movie called The Boston Strangler, and it's about this woman.
Like reporter, right?
Yeah, Keira Knightley's the reporter, but it's about this woman who basically is an investigator in the 1960s, and she investigates all these murders of these stranglings, and she finds a connection, and she basically does a better job than the police and helps solve the murders, blah, blah, blah. With all of that to be said is, I don't really know where I was going with. Oh, all that to be said is, like, it's really interesting how crimes or how certain cases or even problems can be solved by individuals who we don't think are the individuals who should solve them. Like, from the outside of the individuals who you would think would be the ones that solving a case. What I mean by that is, like, you would think that would be the police department's job.
Yeah.
But in today's age, and even back in the 60s, but especially now, with, like, the access to media and the access to all these things, like, people like Crime Junkies, like, if you look at the characters in Only Murders in the Building, these are individuals who don't necessarily perceived to have a position
where
at
they
the table.
like where they would be like academically knowledgeable or they have the credentials to
Exactly. Have the
solve a
credentials to
case,
solve a
but
case.
they solve a case.
But they solve a case. So
Interesting.
what looks like on the outside isn't always
what it seems on the inside.
On the inside. I was trying to get deep after I had that thought. But.
Yeah. Oh, that's very good though. And now that is, I mean, I'm like halfway through that movie because we were flying back on a trip the other week, and Kev watched The Strangler thing, so I'm like halfway through, so I don't fully know how it ends. But it is really cool to see like how people will go to certain lengths to find the truth. Yeah. Because even that, like just talking about like the truth of things, I think there seems to be this desire, there probably has always been a desire for the truth. And people are tired of like things being fake. Yeah. Or there to be like perceptions of like the perfect life or the perfect marriage, the perfect job or the perfect scenario, or you have the house. And I don't think that's as appealing to people as it used to be, say like 10, 15 years ago. I don't think it's as appealing anymore. So there's that.
Banana.
I'm not talking about banana right now. I'm talking about the truth. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Well, take it even at that movie we just saw, like Gladiator 2. Shout out. Another really good movie.
That was a good movie.
But like one of the key, I think, tension points is that like the people of Rome and Rome in its current state, people are tired with what it became, and what it became was this facade of like parties, elegance, glamour, killings, power, like all these things that on the outside people strive for and want and are hungry for. Yet when they're in the middle of that, they realize that's not the world that they wanted to build. Yeah. And so it's all about deconstructing that. Mm-hmm. I thought it was so.
Well, yeah, and that like kind of that pristine image that someone's trying to carry it, because sooner or later you get tired of that. Yeah. It's like you get tired of pretending that everything's fine when things are not fine, or even just not fully. Like, I know for me, like when I try to put on like that I'm tough enough to handle something, or if I'm strong enough to, be independent, and when in reality I'm not, that you get pretty tired pretty quickly. Yeah. And so I can't imagine like if you're trying to fake it through your whole life of being someone you're not or whatever.
It's like trying to run a marathon at like your mile record pace.
Mm-hmm. No, it's not sustainable.
You're not going to sustain it. Yeah. That lactic acid's going to build up way too fast.
That's true.
You're gonna bonk.
Yeah, you're gonna bonk. That's true. Don't you listen to running podcasts too? Isn't there one?
I sometimes. I mean, I listen to like Nick Berry, who's a
runner guy.
He's a hybrid athlete. Has a supplement company that I use, which I like, and he's definitely got some knowledge out there that is supported. I think a lot of endurance athletes, but also just the way that athletes train these days, and that you don't necessarily have to be a individual who looks like I'm not saying this to anyone who's out there, but that looks like a twig to be able to run a marathon, right? Like, like I think there's health and fitness has gone a long way.
It's evolved for sure.
And it can be a hybrid athlete that loves both weightlifting and also endurance.
That's true. And we also love Raising Heights, our friend Zach and Tori's podcast. That's been a good one.
Also a good one. I'm just agreeing with you.
That is a good one. Yeah, yes. We love them. They're good friends. And I think I love it just because like we kind of know them on a personal level too. And so getting to support them has been fun. And yeah.
So outside of podcast listening, what have you been up to?
What have we been up to?
No, what have you been up to?
What have I been up to?
Yeah.
I don't. It's been pretty chill for me. I've been having a lot more quiet time lately. I've been work part-time right now, so that's been nice to sit kind of just get in like a relaxed state, I guess, because I feel like the holidays could be super busy, but this is kind of nice to just chill out for a bit.
Do you miss the hustle and bustle?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes. I think it depends. I like being on the go. I like feeling like I have things to do, but then there comes a point where I think I've learned to recognize that it's nice just to not have to be kind of going back to that thing of people are looking for like the truth and just the raw reality, like the the authentic versions of things. And I think in my authentic self right now, I don't think I could keep just performing, but, just like going after things constantly. So I'm enjoying just staying in my sweatpants, in my hoodie, working away, making my coffee, chilling, reading my Bible, going for a walk, going to the gym. Been doing that a lot more consistently, so that's been good. Kevin's kind of been motivating me because he's running a lot, and then so now when he runs, I go to the gym, and it's kind of nice to be feeling a little bit more active.
Good.
Yeah. But anyway, it's funny you said that. So this morning I was reading in the Bible this morning. I'm going through the book of Luke all the way. So I started on December 1st, and then by the time we get to the 24th, I'll be done the book, and it's really good. I love his perspective. I love the language that he uses. I love the different parables that he highlights that Jesus teaches from. And there was one section I was reading today, and it was in Luke 14, and so I've got my Bible here just so I don't mess this up. But there is, in my Bible, I'm reading in the NLT, there is this heading. See right here, it's like Jesus, it says Jesus heals on the Sabbath. And for some reason, this is why I love the Bible, because sometimes things stand out to me, other times, they don't. And I love that every time you can open the Bible, something new has the potential to really stand out. And so I read this title, and basically what the little passage says, and I'm going to read it, says, one Sabbath day, Jesus went to eat dinner in the home of a leader of the Pharisees, and the people were watching him closely. There was a man there whose arms and legs were swollen. Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in religious law, "Is it permitted in the law to heal people on the Sabbath day or not?" When they refused to answer, Jesus touched the sick man and healed him and sent him away. Then he turned to them and said, "Which of you doesn't work on the Sabbath? If your son or your cow falls into a pit, don't you rush to get him out?" Again, they could not answer. And I found that so interesting because what stood out to me was that Jesus can move and heal at any time he wants. That the way that God can work in our life is independent of how we think or in the ways that we think he couldn't. So like the Sabbath, what the Bible says and what God has said is that it's designed, for man and not for God. And so it's our day of rest, but that doesn't mean that God isn't still working. And I just found that it really stood out to me, because then in the passage right before that, in Luke 13, in verse 34, there's a part that Jesus says, "How often I have wanted to gather your children together as a hen protects her chicks beneath her wings, but you wouldn't let." And what stood out to me from that is that we are actually the ones who end up resisting the help of God. And it's not really God that resists us, but it's us. And I found that tied into how God always works, even when we don't think he would, or even maybe when we don't think he could possibly want to. So
that's a really good morning thought.
It was a good morning thought. Yeah, we resist, we are the ones that resist God's help.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting in that passage too that I don't know, I find it said it, but the Pharisees people were watching closely. There's a man there with whose arms and legs are swollen. Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in religious law, "Is it permitted in the law to heal people on the Sabbath day or not?" When they refused to answer, Jesus touched the sick man. And so it's I like that he was going after what the world would call or assume are the experts in understanding whether or not certain things can happen on that day.
Yeah.
And those experts, quote unquote, didn't even, and we're not there, we weren't in the room, but it's they refused to answer. I feel like they would, if they can't even answer, it's just great. It just goes to show what I'm trying to say is how Jesus is truly the one that has the power and the control and the.
Yeah. Well, and then when he says too, at the end, if your son fell in a pit on the Sabbath, would you wait till the next day to get him out, or would you get him out?
Depends if he's in trouble.
If he wasn't in trouble, it's and then it says again they could not answer.
Yeah.
And it kind of I don't know, it spoke to me this morning because I feel like sometimes I am too hesitant or afraid to pray certain prayers because I don't think that God could answer them in the time that I'm praying them. Or like if say I have like a goal for this year, or I want to have some things accomplished, or even just like I want to see God move in a certain area, sometimes I find I don't pray that prayer because I want to get something else done first before I pray that prayer. Like it's almost like I don't think I'm ready to pray, or I don't think that God would want to answer me right now, or that maybe he doesn't want me to pray for that and I'll pray for something else. You know what I'm saying?
Or are you too scared?
Yeah, almost like I'm in all reality, it's like I feel like sometimes I'm limiting God.
Yeah.
Just like how these Pharisees were limiting, Jesus to heal on the Sabbath, or to even just be kind to this man who had been sick, because of a certain restriction that they had put on God.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I think I would agree in that it's easy to be comfortable in the current situation, and especially easy to be comfortable when like God has granted the like said yes to a prayer that you've prayed.
Yeah.
For you to then quote unquote pray again for that next thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, it's true. And then it's like, and that goes back to then that thing of when Jesus was like, to gather, I've always wanted to gather your children as a hen protects her chicks beneath her wings, but you wouldn't let me. It goes back to that idea that we're the ones that resist the Lord. Mm-hmm. It's not God resisting us. It's not God refusing to help us, maybe in the way that we can imagine in our finite brains, but we're the ones that put those restrictions on God.
Yeah.
That's whether that's unbelief, whether that's a lack of faith, whether that's we're tired, or we don't believe anymore, or we get too distracted. There's so many things, like restrictions that we can put on God, having the chance to show up for us in unexpected ways.
I just don't think we put enough emphasis on the relationship that with God in comparison to like the relationship that like other because,
yeah, I mean, that's true.
Like the end of the passage, I would think anyone. Sorry, I have some itching it. I think anyone like would say yes to working on the Sabbath meant that they going to like save their son.
Mm-hmm.
But that they can't necessarily say the same, like about what they would do with their father and their relationship. Like, I think that people just separate themselves from the fact that like God can still move in your life, regardless of the situation, regardless of the time.
Yeah. Well, and we can make like even just like our own schedules, or like, and we can make our schedules an idol in a way of like how we set out like, okay, I need to be at this point at this age, I need to have this relationship, I need to have this job, I need to have this much money, and so let me go through that and let me pray in that order. So pray for those things and then check, but I'm not going to pray for that other thing until I've gotten this thing. And in a sense, like that's making your schedule and your time an idol, because you are doing things for your schedule. Like you're putting your schedule first, you're putting, what you want to accomplish in what order. And that's resisting the Lord, because you don't know like the certain things that God wants to do simultaneously.
That's true too.
In your life. Like God wants us, the Sabbath is for rest. The Sabbath is for us to reconnect with God. It's for us to, have our downtime. It's also for us to restore like our spirits. But it can also be a chance where God can heal us, or where we can experience joy, or, a prayer could be answered. But if we're not praying those prayers because we're quote unquote supposed to be doing something else or focusing on something else, we're going to like totally limit the possibilities of God loving us in the ways that he wants to.
Preach.
Right? And I'm not saying like if we pray for everything, we're going to get it. Like that's not what we're talking about, but it's that idea of maybe it's asking ourselves that question, and I'm asking it to myself right now. Like, what are things that I am not praying for because I am trying to check off other things first.
Hmm.
And I believe that's resisting. It's resistant.
I would agree.
So, anyways, Kevin, what are things that you aren't praying for, or like that maybe you are limiting the Lord in, if you can share?
It's like a counseling session now.
No, it's an honest question.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I think I need to sit and spend time with it, but I would say, I think like security and financial security has always been something that is weighed heavy on my mind, especially since getting married and being a man and wanting to accomplish the task of providing for the household. And I think when financial security becomes such an emphasis, you can quickly lose focus on other areas of your life that are equally as or more important. And I think financial security is something you'll never necessarily achieve. It'll be something that you always think about, regardless of the amount of money that you have in your bank account.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's how do you steward that? But at the same time, how do you allow other areas of your life to remain open, and other possibilities to remain open, while still having a healthy view of money?
Yeah.
And trusting God, because He's trusted you with what He's given you, because everything He's given you is a gift, and everything that He's given us is a gift. And trusting that we will steward those gifts well, I think, is part of the financial responsibility, but also like not necessarily just holding that so tight, to your point of being like, I have to get here until I'm ready to make that next move. So like maybe for us, like it's like have to financially secure until before we can, or like we have to have this much before we can make the move, saying we want to buy a house. Which, I mean, finances to that.
Like,
but,
in a sense, that's true, but if you're making that the ultimate thing that's driving your decision.
And, like, another big thing, like, we talked about, but it's, like...
Family planning. Yeah. Kids.
Like, kids. Yeah. I think it's more like, okay, we have to be here so we can have a house before we have kids. And, like, yes, those are all great things. There's wisdom in that. But at what point am I saying... Like, when does that I have to be here, then I'm here, turn into, oh, now I have to be here?
Yeah.
And, like, when does the delaying cause, like, become the ultimate decision? And when is, like, at what point does the delaying delay you enough from then not making that decision?
True. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's like you start off, it's how we, like, it's like when you're it's like you start off with good intentions, and we start off with the right way, like, yeah, you know what, we're going to be wise, we're going to do this, and that's all well and good, but then exactly what you're saying, at what point then does prolonging things and as you keep pushing to that next place and delaying what God has already put on your heart?
Exactly.
Because like in all truthfulness, like, we do have kids on our mind, and we do have, like, we want to be parents one day, like, not pregnant right now or anything,
no,
but like
she's not.
Yeah, so not nothing like that, but that is something that we have, like, in our hearts to hopefully and one day, like, have happen. But if what Kevin's saying, which I totally agree, it's like if we're like, okay, we have to get here before we can even think about this, and then once we're there, and then it might be, oh, but we also then have to get here and here and here, and then we'll really feel okay. And then what happens when we're still there? We're like 10 years down the line, and we're like, oh, wait a minute, we just wasted all of this time thinking that we needed to be somewhere, or thinking that we needed to have arrived, when in all reality, we're never going to truly arrive.
Exactly. And I'm not saying, and me saying this is like, people listening could be like, well, you and Danielle are living in 2 countries right now, like, it would not be responsible for you to even think about kids right now. And I'm like, yeah, like, maybe that is true. Like, it would not be the quote unquote most responsible thing to think about. But what I'm saying is, like, if the outcome while we were in this situation happen to be kids still, like, that isn't ultimately a bad thing. And I think it's just the way that you perceive of, like, your perception of time and your perception of arriving at something before you think you're ready is delaying or hindering God's ability to perform certain miracles in your life.
Yeah. Like, your perception needs to be evaluated.
Exactly.
I think. And even if you've thought things through or you started off with well and good intentions in the beginning, it is very wise to be reevaluating your perception of the path that you're on, because things can adjust and change. And I think the Bible tells us, like, humans make idols and we fall short and we, like, veer off the path so easily. And it's just, I think it's just that reminder of keeping our eyes on what truly is the most important thing, which is giving the Lord access to every part of our lives.
Yep.
Our bodies, our minds, our souls, our attention, our devotion, and the ways that we can do that, just like in this kind of passage, what we're talking about is making sure that we are not resisting God's prompts or his help, or even just like his little nudges to do something hard or to make changes, that we're not resisting those things, which will hinder where he ultimately wants us to go, because that's also where we want to go to. No, that's a good word. So lots to think about, but I think it's kind of cool to think of just that. I think it's cool to think about how, like, there is always things that we can work on, and there is always God always wants to help us through things. And even when we think that we're not doing it right, or maybe that we failed or that we fall short, he always welcomes us home with open arms, and he always welcomes us back. There's so much grace in following Jesus. There's so much love. There's so much just intention that he has for us, and he gives us his full attention. And it's when we don't feel that his attention is on us, it's usually because we're the ones that have resisted in some way. But when we can come to terms with that and turn from that, is when we get to open ourselves back up again and kind of just follow him in the right way.
Yeah.
That was my quiet time this morning.
That was a lot.
It was a lot, but
Next
I think
episode,
all good things.
We'll talk about Kevs.
There we go. That'll motivate you to...
It'll be a lot more quiet.
There you go. That's funny. Anyways, I think we'll wrap this up here, but thank you guys for joining us today. Hope that gave you something to think about. What areas are you resisting the Lord's help in? Are you prioritizing your own schedule and your own plans over maybe what God wants to be doing simultaneously in your life? Because I do believe that we have a capacity for many things, and many things can be one or two or three things. And so just really, I think our encouragement is don't limit the Lord in your life, that if he wants to heal today, he can heal. That if you want to pray for, reconciliation, pray for reconciliation. He can reconcile a relationship at the drop of a hat. If you are in financial trouble, if you are just really struggling, like mentally, physically, like ask the Lord to intervene. And I'm sure with all my heart that you will be surprised at the ways that he can step in to heal, because he really does move at all times.
He does.
So anyways, Kev, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
I said us. I don't know why. I just thought that'd be funny.
Guest and not a host.
Yes. Anything you want to say to our readers, our listeners?
Our listeners.
Goodness gracious.
Nope. Shine your light. I can't shine your light. You can't shine my light.
You sound like me. But when we shine them together, the world gets brighter. That was great. Okay, guys, we'll see you next week. Bye.
See ya.